Hey guys, it's Martin Miller here with another installment of the vlog/podcast thing that I'm doing. And today I got a very, very special episode lined up for you that is not directly related to guitar playing, unlike all the other stuff that I'm doing. And for that purpose, I have a very special guest with me. He's a master vocalist. He's a master vocal instructor, and he has been teaching me for a little while now. I'm here to talk to Carl Whedon. Carl, why don't you introduce yourself to the audience?
Hello, mate. Yeah, thank you for your kind words. I am, like Martin says, I'm a voice coach. I've been kind of coaching on and off on YouTube, I guess, or Skype really for be about 5 years now, developing what I've been doing, developing my ideas, and I've been kind of putting a bit more time into this over the last year or so, and starting to get better results with students and things like that. So I was lucky enough to have Martin come across my channel and contact me, and we've been kind of working together for a while, and he's been making some progress, and it's a two-way thing with the coaching. So whenever my students make progress, it helps me make progress, and it's generally good fun. But what the idea was here was we're going to kind of cover a few topics, and kind of talk about. We've got specific things in common, haven't we, Martin? Basically, that we happened to figure out once we started to working together. Common ground, so to speak. Would you say so?
Yes, I mean, you're a guitar player, right? That was your main instrument for the longest time, right?
Yeah, so when I started from when I was young, I guess about 12, 13, I was playing guitar in my teenage years, not really singing at all. And long story short, I had a repetitive strain injury in my early 20s, and it meant I couldn't really play guitar for a significant amount of time. And so I just kind of fell into singing almost accidentally, and unfortunately fell in love with it for various reasons, and ended up basically having my own struggles going through that, and eventually starting putting up a few videos trying to help other people, and whilst I was still developing myself and getting into the coaching and things, I ended up talking to you today, I guess. But it was just a journey of kind of discovery, things I wasn't expecting when I first got into singing. But I guess with me and you, we were both guitar players, and we came into singing as adults.
Exactly.
And so I get quite a lot of my students are, they play other instruments before they come to me, and they try and sing, and they've immediately hit walls. They don't really know why. Unfortunately, with the singing stuff, people tend to assume that you can either sing or you can't, or the voice you were born with is the voice you were destined to have forever.
But there's a reason why that's with singing, is because, if I understood this correctly, and correct me if I'm wrong, by the time you learn how to speak, you're born with perfect vocal technique. And you abandon it as you go on. And certain people just manage to retain that by starting to sing at a very early age.
Yeah. What tends to happen is, as people grow into their teenage years and things, they tend to inhibit their voice in ways they're not really consciously aware of. So like you say, when we're kids typically, I wouldn't say they necessarily sing very well straight away, but they are very free when they vocalize instantly. They can vocalize a very broad range very freely, very easily. So it's this inhibition of range that tends to happen with people, and just this inhibition in general that clouds the very, very clean technique that we are basically universally kind of born with. And that inhibition that starts to grab and cement into the voice is a large part of a lot of the problems we see with musicians trying to transition to singing, and just people as adults who are trying to sing in general. They have this problem of inhibition of habits that they've kind of unconsciously put there to kind of keep the voice feeling safe and secure, and so the goal with a lot of my coaching, because many of my students are instrumentalists first is typically less to do with developing style and developing musicality. Most of them already have that. It's more helping them to start breaking down some of these barriers and walls, helping them to start latching on to the sensations that will actually guide them towards that sense of more freedom in the sound and more freedom in what they're doing.
Yeah, what you just said is very interesting, because that was the exact premise that I went to my first vocal coach with. Is I said, you know what, you don't have to teach me you don't have to teach me any style or anything, because I have never really sung in my life until 2 years ago, but I already know what I want to sound like. You just have to teach me how to control these bodies down here in my throat.
Yeah. What it can feel like when you start, I mean, what it felt like for me was I had in my head, I knew exactly what I wanted to do, how I wanted it to sound. And as soon as I tried to do that, I would just hit this wall. It felt like someone was hitting the brakes. Every time I went to do anything, it was like, grab, push. And I hadn't even been aware that it was a thing that could happen until I started to sing and get into it and find some coaches online and things. Back when I started, there was very little online material. It was kind of in the time when online video was just becoming a thing.
That's probably a good thing, actually, because judging from my experience, until I've come across information that I consider to be valuable, I had to go through such a huge pile of crap, for the lack of a better word.
Yeah. It's a tricky place to navigate YouTube if you're looking for educational advice, because of various reasons. I mean, really, it's kind of like the Wild West, and you've got a fair amount of coaches out there that have good ideas about what they're doing, and some of them have, they have a product that's more angled towards specific styles of music, but I've found that the direction I've been going in more recently, there's not that many coaches out there really talking about some of these more deeper things that happen with adults or young adults most of the time, trying to learn to sing, that have these specific problems of inhibition, and basically fear is a lot of what it comes down to, is this fear of letting the voice do its thing, basically. So it's this funny balance, and a lot of my videos will just talk about technique outside of this idea of, letting go, so to speak, because it is a process of learning what we need to hold on to, and then learning what it is we need to start letting go of. And over time, we really get laser focused in the very specific things that we need to hold on to as singers, because there's something we need to do to sing higher easily. And we start to filter out more of that clutter in the voice, basically, that we, like we were saying, would unconsciously develop through the teenage years.
So, at which point, I mean, you're basically an advocate of Brad Manning's singing success, right? Would you say that?
When I started, it was before singing success was on the internet, really. But when it did come onto the internet, there was a few coaches at that time, a guy called Jesse Nemitz as well, and Shelby.
He's fantastic, yeah.
Yeah, and Shelby, who have similar approaches, and they're still coaches I look up to today.
How did you filter out the good from the bad?
Yeah, I always had a sense of, when I listened to the type of singers I wanted to become, and I listened to the types of ideas that coaches had, I always had this sense of there's something more fundamental that I am missing, that some of these coaches seem to be trying to get me to latch onto. Mm-hmm. So a lot of coaches will focus more on high level things like style, or like
runs,
trills, a lot of details, rather than kind of stripping it away more and trying to zoom out as much as they can, or as much as we can, and start thinking about, a lot of the time, maybe the bigger picture more, is what is, some very simple broad strokes we can make that help us to really put ourselves in the mind of a free natural singer, is really what it comes down to. Because these guys that learn without any help they just learn on their own, sat there trying to figure it out. It's not a very logical, complicated set of thoughts and processes they're going through when they sing. It's got to be simple enough that most of them have figured out at a young age, and most of them have really put something together that's simple enough that it's very dependable and reliable. And so I always was drawn to teachers that seem to have a broad approach of this idea of fundamentals and trying to latch onto simple skills, really. Because good singing is really, in my mind nowadays, is very simple skills, practiced and mastered over a significant period of time.
It's kind of a problem with the internet age, really, because something like runs, trills, power, all those kind of buzzwords, they would sell a lot better. And yeah, when you start out, when you have no fundamentals like me, you kind of start mimicking some stuff that you hear, and then you might run into a coach who tells you, sing it a little bit more like this, try to feel it more like this. And it never quite, the answers I've gotten never quite satisfied me, because yes, with certain songs that I pick very carefully, I can kind of fake my way through by even though some fundamentals are lacking, I can get through certain things because singing and style mask certain problems. But I always felt like what I'm doing doesn't feel right, even though I can make it sound okay by making certain stylistic choices. I'm lacking something more deep. Like I cannot make, like the thing you constantly make me do is I couldn't make an sound. I could not get a clean note at all.
Yeah, it's funny, I'm always I'm looking to find technique that's more universal. So the broader things that can be applied to all styles. There's parts of singing, when we talk about style, that are obviously different between styles and genres. That's self-evident. Everyone knows this. But there's also, when we talk about the basic principles and the fundamentals, there's also a part of that is really universal. Regardless of the style, the good singers will apply these rules and the bad singers will disobey those rules, basically, is what it comes down to. I was actually watching a video about race car driving just a couple of days ago, and there was this guy talking about it's just an analogy that I thought was quite useful in this regard. He was talking about when you learn to drive a race car, the instinct of a lot of people that start is to go as quickly as they can. So they brake very late on corners. They end up passing the limits of the tires a lot. So they're skidding a lot. They're losing a lot of grip. They lose a lot of speed. They take the wrong angles into the corners, etc., etc. And I liken that to singers like myself who get way ahead of themselves when they're learning this stuff and end up in a lot of problems. Now, conversely, the natural singer, and the example he gave with the car was that his advice was drive generally very slowly at first, focus on taking the corners very nice and precisely on the right line, making sure that you're never passing the limits of the grip on the tires, this kind of thing, so that you're always within the rules, the boundaries of that you're working within. Yeah. Natural singers have typically learned that way, where they've built up more gradually over a longer period of time. They've become more assimilated to the real objective boundaries that there are with singing. Whilst free singing, in one sense, is free, there's also this sense of there are kind of rules with the technique that will lead you towards outer muscles, push, lots of things that will lead it towards it just sounding like you hear.
Just to clarify real quick, because we probably have a more of a guitar audience here too. So outer muscles meaning any muscle that is not the vocal cord, that doesn't need to be used in order to create sound.
Yeah. So if you get a singer and there's a lot of kind of, I guess you'd call it clutter. Now some of this can be fine, and if you put in a lot of emotion into a song, you're going to see something on the face. But if it's too much and it's really focused in an area, what it does is it it's like this kind of it creates this wishy-washy set of rules in the mind where there's a lot of muscles that don't need to be involved in the vocalizing process getting involved, and that goes back to what we're talking about at the start, where this inhibition starts to creep in without us realizing when we're teenagers potentially, or young adults, and depending on how much of that stuff there is will depend on, you know, how long it takes to kind of pick away at and undo. But I guess the idea is, yeah, with those outer muscles, it was this sense with the driving that with the naturals, they've learned in a way that has kind of obeyed those rules a little bit more so, and kind of stuck within the, you know, just focusing on the process more and not trying to get too far ahead. Now, part of the reason that happens is because young people do, in practical terms, have a lot more time in front of them. You know, if you're a successful guitar player like yourself and you're producing videos and things, the some of the stumbling blocks that happen are sometimes just to do with the practicality of, right, we need a singer, I've got to make a video, I've got to do this, you know, I've got to get this figured out quick because I'm trying, you know, you might be providing for a family or whatever it is. So there's all sorts of practical things that really do mean that in a lot of ways, some older people do have this sense of, I got to get this figured out now because I've got stuff I need to get done. Younger people have that a lot less. They've got this sense of, I've got my whole life in front of me. So just that kind of shift in itself can help the learning process with younger people, where they feel like they've got more time to take their time and learn it more gradually.
It's also the motivation is more intrinsic. It's like it's singing for the sake of singing, not for the sake of, I gotta make a video and our singer is unreliable, so I want to kick him out and sing myself, or those kind of reasons.
Exactly. And I kind of generally try and encourage a lot of students to take as much time as they need, because you know, there's only so much work you can chip away at and do every day with the voice, and it's a case of gradually over time, like a flower, it will slowly open and free up, and you'll feel, but you know, your singing's getting better, but it's something that you can't really force. You have to nurture it.
And the voice, being an organic instrument, is so unpredictable at times and so prone to injury or weakness, like temporarily. It's like I've been out with the car the last couple of days quite a bit, so I've been vocalizing every day in the car for a couple hours. And whenever I thought I had a bit of an epiphany and there's something I couldn't do before, you try to hold on to it for a little while and you feel really good about yourself, and the next day it's just gone. It's like a constant process of 2 steps forward, 1 step back.
Very much so, yeah. And the tricky thing is, when it goes, you can't find it the next day, is the choice you make at that moment is sometimes not you personally, but we as singers, is you try and push it a little bit. You try and fiddle around and try and get it to work one way or another. And if we can latch on to the basic skills as much as possible, we've got a chance of it being very, very repeatable, because those simple rules are very, very dependable actually. But it's a question of, can we get a singer to go back down through all those layers of detail and just go back to making sound, like you said, this sound when we just go it seems so simple, but it's this idea of, right, just get away from singing.
Can you explain to our audience why the is like a...
Well, it's kind of this idea, in terms that we're talking about basic, you know, voice skills, is a lot of the time it's this idea of really just getting away from singing some, because there's all sorts of expectations that people have, you know, when they go to sing. And a lot of the time we have people, they talk to you very clearly and cleanly, and then they go to sing and it will immediately be this different approach. Mm-hmm. And so they go into, I mean, I would call singing mode, I guess. And they approach things differently. So I try and just start people from this idea of, right, let's just use your voice. Don't even think about singing. And this particular sound, when I go, it's just so simple to make, and it doesn't sound impressive, but we've got actually quite a lot of good things happening with the voice with a simple sound like that. There's no clutter. if you notice it, it really is very similar to how I would talk. It's just right there. And so we're looking to start really from that foundation of getting out the way of all these preconceptions and just using the voice and focusing more on what we're doing and less on the outcome. And trust that the process and learning the skills will improve the outcome as a result. So all sorts of ideas like this really that I guess I'm a big advocate of, and I kind of push a lot on my channel and try and get out there, just because I do feel like singers like yourself who already have this musical knowledge do you go out there and there's not necessarily that much of these types of ideas around really. They can be tricky to find. My channel's not that big, and like you say, frankly, that can be because I don't necessarily have buzzy content as much so as as some of the more popular channels out there. I've kind of just got some simple ideas that I'm trying to get across to people that for guys like you will help hugely, because you want to get something more professional sounding together relatively quickly. And you can, like you say, you can fiddle around with the stylistic approach as much as you want, but when it's not getting back to the root cause of the problem, exactly. You can end up just kind of basically in no man's land for your whole life is really what it comes down to.
Also, what you're selling is the hard truth, and not it's not sugar coated. You're not selling a feel good product.
Yeah,
you're not telling anybody. Yeah, just let's just sing, let's enjoy, and the voice is going to grow into this beautiful thing. That's not what you're selling. So
yeah, I think I do probably filter out quite a few people just based on I do tend to keep it as probably more real than most, because there's no doubt some very, very large practical hurdles that most people will face in their singing journey, even if they've got the best help, it's still a challenge. I mean, the main reason I come back to singing and I can't give it up is because it always throws something up. No matter how long you've been doing it, you'll sit down one morning and you'll be like, this isn't working, man. And hopefully you've got the tools in your mind and you've developed it long enough that you can, draw from that experience and try and figure out a way to navigate that tricky path for the day. Because, like you were saying earlier, some days the voice is different from others. This is unique to singing. You pick up your guitar every day, it will feel the same, but the voice isn't so much like that. It can get pretty consistent over time, but it still varies from day to day. So it's literally like, having a guitar where, or having a set of fingers where one day you wake up and your fingers are a little bit shorter, or they don't really want to seem to work as smoothly as normal, things like that. And, various things, or your fingertips are a little bit swollen. I'm giving you a kind of abstract examples, but the vocal folds will thicken up when we're a little bit sick or a little bit worn down, and that thickness in the chord will make it a little bit harder work to get up into the higher range. And being able to have the experience to know what that feels like and how to deal with that. Typically, a lot of inexperienced singers will tend to push on those days, and unfortunately, that extra little bit of push can then become a little bit of a habit, and over time that push can lead to more push, and it kind of becomes this self-reinforcing negative cycle that they can get in if they're not careful.
One thing I would really like to get into is to break it. We went very broadly now. Let's be very specific. A lot of my viewers are in my shoes. They've contemplated singing, but always shied away from it. They're in an adult age. They have musical skill. Where do they start? What do you recommend?
I recommend start by just singing a lot. Making an effort to sing basically every day or 6 days a week or something. So not necessarily for hours on end. One of the good things about the voice is you only probably really need to practice maybe for an hour or so. Most days, 5-6 days a week, and you can get a lot out of that. I'll probably sing for maybe 2 or 3 hours some days, but I don't really put in as many hours as I did when I was growing up guitar, where I'd be practicing for hours and hours and hours and hours.
If in order to become a world-class guitar player or piano player, there has to be a phase in your life where you go 6 hours a day.
Yeah,
it's just inevitable. It's inevitable.
Certainly, there's also a lot of advantages with practicing singing. So in terms of the time, like I will have formal practice maybe for an hour or so each day, but then a lot of the time when I'm walking around with my headphones on, when I'm at work, there's always little opportunities where I can just do little bits in my mid-range, not a high volume, chipping away. So with that time added, it does all add up. But the idea is that you just got to start singing a fair amount. Finding problems. Some singers like yourself, just they won't come across anywhere near as many issues as I did, for example, when I started. And this is just luck of the draw. You know, it's really a case of how much of that kind of grubby inhibition has been reinforced over how much time will dictate how easy or tricky the journey can be. But yeah, firstly, start singing, start finding problems in terms of, not necessarily that you know how to fix, but this sense of, right, when I do this sounds really nice and free. When I do it this way, it kind of sounds pushed. Why does it sound pushed? Start thinking about, I guess, the whys and the hows. I worked with the Singing Success program day in, day out for a long time as well. So that's another thing I would recommend, is just having a program you can just plug in and figure out. Also, a lot of my videos will give you some tips. In terms of where to start, I think the one good thing can be just to get 1 or 2 lessons with somebody you trust, to say, okay, you're doing this well, you need to chip away at this, helping you to start focusing on the right things. One thing that really is a defining thing for people that are starting out as adults is they go on YouTube, they get a ton of information, and they start focusing on a million different things. And what you'll find just when you work with me, or typically with a good coach, is they will help drag you back to just some very simple ideas that you can chip away at day in, day out, without having to get into all of the really high level abstract stuff that these channels will lead you towards. So trying to, if you get a couple of lessons with someone, is somebody that's trying to guide you to some simple ideas that you can apply and build on each day. And even from that, even if you've just got 2 or 3 hours with a coach, it will help you to start focusing on the function, on what you're doing, on these simple things that you can follow, which will then allow you to start trusting some in the outcome. If you've got a sense in your head already of, all the stylistic things and the music
which
stuff,
is the case for most people watching.
Yeah. The idea is that the problems with the inhibition or any kind of issues that come there is got to get back to just a simple foundation, so we can start freeing up the voice and start really allowing ourselves to stop worrying about the technique. Really, the good technique and the simple technique, all it really gives you is the ability to not have to worry about technique and just let go and start focusing on the music. And that's the goal, is to really get away from technique as we improve at it. So I guess summarizing really is singing day in, day out, get a program, get a couple of lessons with somebody that you like and you feel you connect with in terms of their ideas, where they went, that there's some kind of match there, that you feel some kind of connection.
What qualities should you be looking for in a coach? How would you, as a layman, differentiate between a good and a bad coach?
I always found that with some coaches, I just felt a sense of connection with, like, the ideas they had, what they were talking about, where they were going with their own voice, and just this sense of, okay, this is a match here. They've got something that I want, basically, is really what it comes down to. And, some coaches will put out information videos, some will put out their own singing, some will put out both. So you can get a sense of, at least some sense of what they have to offer. But if you feel that connection where there's this match, you feel like they have something that you want, they've got some skill that you feel like you want to nurture more, then that's a good sign. Also, just getting some lessons, like you've experienced and like I experienced and many of us will have, is, getting like a lesson with 5 or 6 or 7 different coaches, just a couple of hours or 1 hour with each, will immediately give you a broader sense of what teachers are going to potentially take you in the right direction, what's going to help, what isn't. One of the main problems with a lot of this stuff is that a lot of people starting out they just haven't had a bunch of lessons with a bunch of different teachers, and so they don't really know. So when you get a lesson, you will get a sense of if that's going to work, and if they're a good coach, they'll be able to get something out of you, or get something in your head to click in an hour. And really that's the job of a coach. It's at least in this regard, is not so much trying to get you to sing amazingly well straight away, or it's more a case of trying to get the technical things to tick over and click in your head, start getting you focusing on the right things, the causes of the problems that are actually going to that you need to fix over time and address, and then really the hard work comes down to the student. If the teacher can get you to latch onto something and to notice something functional that you can feel, that if I do it this way it works, if I do it that way it doesn't work, then that is really the, what do they call it, epiphany that you want in a lesson or a few lessons, where immediately you feel like, okay, now all I need to do is I need to latch onto this more and let go of that other stuff more. And that really is when you will feel like, okay, I now have a coach that is guiding me the right way.
Yeah, which is the case with you for me, because I never, in the 1.5 years before I came to you of singing, I never thought of compression as a variable. And it was something that was never addressed in my previous lessons, and which really is the core of all the problems I have. And the cool thing is, from now having taken a bunch of lessons with you, I kind of know where I need to be going. I could make progress on my own. Still, I prefer to have like a weekly training session. It's just like, I can go to the gym. I know I just have to get on the elliptical and do the thing. But if somebody is there to guide me and to constantly monitor what I'm doing, that's more preferable for me.
Well, it helps you not to drift off center too much, which tends to happen when you go for months without, if you're still learning. But I like what you said is that you feel like you're starting to latch on to things that you can figure out yourself, because that's where you want to end up. Is you've got the tools and the skill set to when you build your voice each day, which is frankly what we all have to do, is you've got the tools to do it yourself and to figure it out yourself, rather than always having to depend on somebody, or what is for most people is feeling like you're in a dark room where whatever you do makes it worse, frankly, most of the time. So it varies. Some students will have 2 or 3 sessions, and then they will have a couple of months working on their own, and then I do 2 or 3 more. Other people do once a week. It really depends. Each person's kind of got their own unique way of wanting to learn all this. But yeah, once you can get down to, like you say, you'd never thought about compression, or even just this idea of how much am I squeezing those chords together.
Again, for the audience, compression meaning basically there's 2 functions of the vocal folds. That is stretching, which is pitch adjustment, and squeezing together, which is the difference between and
Yeah, exactly. You explain it very well. And so a lot of coaches won't get down to these kind of functional ideas about the practical, application of like how much of how much of this are we employing, and is that changing through the range and things like that. So this idea of functional teaching really takes us back to when we're playing guitar. We're looking at the motion of the fingers, and bad guitar players will have a lot of kind of big finger movements. You see this with bad guitar players. Do you know what I mean, Martin?
I've come across a bunch of them in my time, including myself. So.
Yeah, I mean we've all been there where we kind of feel like, oh, that just looks a bit janky. You see it in sports as well, if you notice with some players. But the idea is that the better players will have a more efficient motion in the fingers. A lot of the time when we're working with functional voice coaching is we're trying to really work at it that way. We're trying to get some more efficient coordinations going. We're trying to get, less of all this. When we talk about outer muscles and singing, you can think of a guitar, you see a lot of guitar players with a lot of muscle tension here and
or
their
moving
whole
their
hand.
shoulders in order to fret a note, or to shape the guitar while they do a vibrato instead of just moving the forearm or rotating the forearm, which is all that needs to happen to get a vibrato.
Exactly, and you see, especially with the right hand with guitar, a lot of times, you see a lot of tension, especially with beginning players, and that's really what we're addressing with the improvement of the technique of the voice as well. It's just making it clean, simple, and efficient and easy.
But you just get the perfect analogy when you said pressing down the note. That could be like an analogy to what compression is, because if you take a note, you push it all the way in, you'll notice that the tension increases and the pitch actually goes higher of the guitar because the tension of the string increases. Try to play a note continuously. Let that tension go, that pressure that you're putting on the string, and let it go to the point where the string doesn't make a sound anymore. It just goes, it craps out, and then apply a little more push again, just enough to make the note ring out. And likewise, you can go from the other direction, start with no pressure on the string and slowly increase it to the point where it makes a sound. And basically, that's the minimum or the perfect amount of pressure that you need in order to make a sound on the guitar. And it's kind of likewise with the voice.
Exactly. It's very, very similar to that in that respect. It's this idea of we need to find, the right amount of work we need to do, and everything else just needs to stay relaxed and calm. And once we've got that foundation to work from, it has a lot of implications as we start practicing. And then also it becomes very simple in a lot of ways. It's just like teaching guitar. The tricky part is you can't see the muscles working in here and the action of the muscles. You can't so much see the outer muscles grabbing. You can a little bit, but that's why the voice is a little bit more ambiguous. You have to hear these things more than see them. You can hear them with the guitar, but you can also visually see that tension. You can't visually see it so much with the voice. So as a coach, you gradually learn to hear it, and you really, anyone can hear this if they go to a bunch of open mics, listen to singers that aren't doing so well. You can hear, if you think about it this way, you can hear that tension in the sound. It's like, yeah, they're singing in tune, but it doesn't quite sound natural or free, or it's hard to put your finger on. But that's really what's happening, is they got a lot of clutter in what they're doing.
Yeah, that for me that was always a thing, that I thought singing was just hitting notes.
Exactly.
And it's just so much more to it, so much more variables.
Yeah, it goes deeper. Should we finish this up, Martin? I feel like we've done very well here, and I'm quite pleased with this. Nice. Yeah, I mean, let me say thank you very much for letting us do this video and putting it up on your channel. That's very kind of you. And if anyone wants to contact me, they like this video, you can hopefully put my email or my channel link in the description of the video, and feel free to drop me an email. A lot of people send me little bits and bobs to say, what do you think of this, where do I need to improve, and that's a kind of stepping stone into lessons, things like that. So like to hear from anybody, and really appreciate this time you've spent today doing this for me.
Oh no, it's I'm very happy to have you. And now we shall continue with some private tutoring.
Cool, man.
Gotta get my lesson on. Cool.
Right. Well, we'll leave it at that, and I'll see you again.
All right, guys. Hope you enjoyed this. Check out Carl on YouTube. Carl, what's your YouTube channel?
Put a link in your description, and people will be able to get to me that. And I will put my email address in there as well.
Cool. I wish you all guys out there good luck on your potential singing journey. Get in touch with Carl, get a lesson, and enjoy. Bye, guys.